Welcome to the Job Search Podcast with your host, John Rivero, where we will be interviewing leading industry experts to help you get the job that you want. Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Canadian Job Search Podcast. My name is John Rivero, your host, and today we've got a very special guest who's going to be sharing insights on his recent job search journey, but also going to be sharing insights on what it takes to succeed in today's job market. With everything that's been happening around this pandemic and with COVID, we know that the numbers are astronomical in terms of candidates that are looking for work today. And I'm hoping, and I know, not hoping, but I know that our guest today is going to give us some really good insight on what it's going to take to succeed. So please help me welcome Elliot Ng, who is a director of customer success and a leadership coach, to our podcast today. So welcome, Elliot.
Thank you so much, John, for inviting me for this podcast.
And it's a pleasure to have you here with us. I know you and we actually met earlier this year at an event. It was reconnecting, I think, because we worked for an organization. We both worked for the same organization a few years back together. And it was just so nice to just reconnect and to chat with you, and now to have you as a guest on the podcast.
Likewise. Yeah, it was wonderful that we got to meet in person before COVID lockdown.
Yes. I know. I kind of, when I think back, going to live events and, being around people, shaking hands, to me today, it seems so foreign. And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I kind of like being I kind of like being around people. So it's going to be interesting what the new world is going to look like when we do get back into a room together, I almost feel like everybody's going to be walking around in little bubbles, and everybody's going to, can't even do a fist bump because everybody's going to be a little afraid to do that. So
yeah,
definitely going to be interesting for sure. So, as we go through our podcast, and let's just get into it. I know you went through a job search journey because you were in the process of looking for a promotion in your career. So if you could just share a little bit of that journey with us, I know my audience member would love to hear that.
Okay, thank you. So to me, as the director of customer success, I think to me it was many months of journey to really understand what I am looking for, and be absolutely clear about myself first, which is a long journey to understand. So I would say everything started even way before even a resume, and in the sense that, what is the fulfillment that I have from my life, in the sense that what makes me happy, and also what challenges me. And maybe another way to look at it is, for those who understand what a mojo is, what get me going, where's my mojo for that. And it was really thank you to my coaching school. It really taught me for the sense of what is my fulfillment in that. So my step one for me is to complete a version of, we call it a wheel of life, to understand within the work life, what different wedges of my life. Imagine my life is kind of like a slice of like a big pizza, different slices of my life. What do I like, right? So I wrote down, leading a team is something that I like. I wrote down starting something from scratch and building it from the ground up is something that I like. I also wrote down that analytics is something that's really important to me for that. So that sort of get me first started to understand myself first before I can even connect with anyone else.
Excellent. So, and what was that process like for you? I know you talked about going through the wheel of life and answering some of those questions as part of that. So, you said it took you some time. So how much time and effort did you actually put into your job search? Because it's the question that I get asked a lot, how much time should I be putting into this? If I'm looking for a new role, if I'm thinking about doing some sort of switch in my career, how much time should I actually be contributing to this process?
I would say that probably took close to a year or even longer. Everything started off maybe about last summer. In 2019, really started to understand what it really means, right? And it's a continuous process, because what matters then, it was just that point in time, right? but I think if this thought process is done properly, the motivation or things that give me the mojo should be consistent over time, right? Like whatever get me going today should be somewhat similar, even 5 years out, 10 years out, because it's also about connecting my own fulfillment and my own life purpose for that.
Yeah. So as you were planning for I guess the next step in your career, the change, the transformation, you thought about it long term, right? Because I know, in some of the candidates that I've spoken to, it's pretty much I just need something now, right? Like I just want to get into something now because, I got bills to pay and all that stuff. So if you were given the choice, and I'm going to ask you, Elliot, because you just kind of went through this exercise recently. If you were given the choice, would you just jump into something immediately, or would you hold out for something better?
I would say it all depends on the situation of the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the case that you talked about, bills to pay, just need something right now, then I think obviously the process would be very different in the sense that try to understand what the marketplace is looking for, right? And try to fit into the roles available out there, and sort of try to put the requirement of it into fit in the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the versions I've been talking about and the versions I'm actually teach my client is to do a longer horizon version of it, to really understand much better about of a fit, rather than just putting it, uh, I guess just really taking on any job.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. And I think depending on where you are in your career and at what stage, sometimes you just got to jump in just to kind of get a feel for what's right. And I guess as you get more seasoned and more comfortable in your role, as you mature, this is where you start to really figure out what the next piece of the path starts to look like. So yeah, no, that's great advice. So as you were going through your journey, what would you say was your biggest challenge?
I would say the biggest challenge at the beginning was that once I figured out what I want, but also writing in a sense that it actually makes sense for myself and also
Mm-hmm.
makes sense for others, right? So it's like me as a marketer, even as a marketer, I find it extremely difficult to market myself, right? And in a sense that, let's say I want to do X, Y, Z, and then try to say it in a way that the words actually make sense, trying to say that to make it that it sounds appealing. And sometimes it sounds so forceful, that I'm trying to sell other people about what I am, versus is actually something very natural, almost kind of like this current podcast that we're in, that is
Mm-hmm.
much more conversational, much more organic rather than the forceful part. I think to me, that's the most difficult part, is to really almost like double click from the vision statement from that and what it actually means.
Yeah. No, and you're right, 100%. I'm with you too. I find it so difficult. It's easier to take somebody and market somebody else than it is your own self, right? So,
Absolutely.
so how did you overcome the challenge? What did you do? What were some of the steps that you did to really market yourself in a way that was going to align you with the type of work that you wanted to do?
So this is the part that is quite interesting, and this is the part that is a slightly different answers.
Okay.
I imagine, in a sense that by me helping others through coaching, right? By me helping so many job seekers who lost a job because of COVID, by me seeing how many people who've been very confused and have a lot of self doubt about themselves, the more I process that version for the coachees, the more I understand myself better.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah,
So,
so in a way, I found a way, almost like I found a way to recharge myself, in a sense that by me helping, I remember client number one. It was a friend of mine. I feel a lot of connection, that knowing that there will be laid off very soon. The warning sign is a laid off,
mhm.
and being very crystal clear, with the very similar process I was just sharing earlier, about what is be crystal clear about what matters, what is what is the value proposition, what is the secret sauce of my friend, and be laser focusing on that, but also seeing the results. That by clarifying this way, there's more response from recruiters. There's more response from that. That sort of re-engages me again to be much more clear of myself as well.
Nice. So getting clarity, and that's a big part of it, right? Like I think if people just get clear in terms of what it is they want to do, that right there is going to make a huge difference for them, right? I know,
Absolutely, yeah.
right? And it sounds like it was one of the things that was successful for you too, right? Like just getting clarity and working with your clients and working with, some of the people that you were coaching. So the question is, and not everybody is going to have clients that they can turn to. Is there any sort of self-reflective exercises that people can do to get to a point of clarity without having to necessarily work with or, necessarily be a coach to assist other people? Is there any strategies or tips that you can share with the audience members to kind of help them get some of that clarity?
Yeah, I find that sort of writing iterative versions of that really helpful. And I also find that even doing in a way, let's say you write a bullet points about what you are, but maybe say it in front of the mirror and say it enough times to see that whether that actually make any sense at all, right? And sometimes, let's say even go for a walk outside, and then afterward just come back and then just read it out to yourself, and then we really give you a sense of what you're saying is actually connect with anybody.
Yeah, no, excellent. Great point. And, it's a great way to kind of measure the, I'm going to call it the BS meter, right? So if you're looking in the mirror and you're reading back these things to yourself, are the belief systems that you have in place supporting what you're saying, right? Or are the things that you're saying not necessarily aligning and resonating with you? And that's great because I feel like, if people just got into a room and they were clear in terms of what they were going to do, I would only imagine that would also impact your confidence, right?
Absolutely. I think having a good sense of self clarity make everything else much easier. That in a sense, what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to give the tips is once the once yourself is being very clear, like what you said earlier, the clarity of yourself, then slowly by slowly, that's why I call it make things happen. Slowly by slowly, things will be manifested because let's say I actually like purple, for example, but I never tell people I like purple, and I keep I keep holding it back, that the fact that I like purple. And then blue comes, oh, blue might be interested. Red comes, red might be interested, but it's hard for the universe to manifest it, because if I tell people that I like purple, then somehow somewhere the purple would be shown up in my life.
Yeah. No, and actually this is a whole other podcast on its own, just in terms of manifesting and no, but 100% having, and just going back to what you were saying, manifesting the career that you want comes from the clarity of making sure you know what it is you want to do. And, just,
Absolutely.
going back to your purple example, like, if you don't know that you're looking for purple, even though you don't have to say it, I think what ends up happening is something else will show up for you because you don't have that clarity. And, instead of taking the purple, you're going to take a blue just because it's there. It's like, oh, it's close enough. It's kind of like a tint of purple. So I'll kind of take that. And then you find that you're just not happy with that. So yeah, no, for sure. When it comes to the manifesting piece of it, having the clarity actually helps those things show up for you too, right? Because the conversations you start to have with people start to be very different because now you're speaking a different language, right? Because you're clear in terms of where you want to go.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like having the mind and body connected, because it's the clarity of self, and also because of the clarity of self. Well, let's say talking to people become less nervous, and even writing in, like, let's say a LinkedIn introductions to a potential recruiter, that would be much more connected as well, right? Or even just having any virtual networking chats as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I see the importance and I see the value of doing that. because I see this too, and I'm sure you've seen it as well. When you're at networking events and people come up to you and it's like, "Hello, how are you doing?" The conversation never goes anywhere because there's no depth to it, right? And if you're clear in terms of what you're doing, if you're clear in terms of your your end goal, right? And, you're very clear in terms of your vision for what you want to do, then you can go up to somebody and say, hey, I want to meet you for this reason. Here's, what I'd like to learn from you. And this is where you really start to add value back to your network, right? And you start to build different types of relationships as well because of the clarity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it really connects to the fact that after months and months of figure that one out, after months and months of networking and telling others, then it sort of come back to, I'm just reading out a little bit from the about section on my LinkedIn, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? I now the version that I have now is I said, I make things happen, a growth marketing executive focusing on customer centricity, operational excellence, and Scrum leadership to grow millions of customers and base revenue. And that alone took months and months to figure it out. But once it's clear, notice how crystal clear what the vision statement is. What is something that Elliot could offer, rather than really wishy-washy about what's going on, rather than the fact that, oh, I'm compatible with X, Y, and Z. I'm actually really flexible. Throw anything at us, at me, I can actually help you solve the challenge, and it become much more granular, much more specific, and much more clear.
Yeah. No, no, and that's an excellent point, right? Like getting, and people think, you write a sentence and that's it, right? You're done. And it's like, oh yeah, you know what, this is what I do, or this is the type of work that I'm involved in. But you're right, it's a process, right? And it takes a couple of revisions to get to a point where a single line can make a world of difference in terms of explaining to people what you do. So thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. What I want to ask you next, and somebody as a leader, you are a director of customer success. I'm sure you've gone through the process where you've had to recruit people and hire people for your own department and for your own team. So what are some of the things that you look for as a director? What are you looking for in people, especially today, in today's environment? What are you looking for in a candidate to stand out and to be different?
Yeah, so it's been a humbling experience, to be able to be on the hiring side, and then one thing that I think a lot of candidates don't realize is as much work it is from the candidate to prepare, the resume, the cover letter packages there. There's actually even more work on the recruiting side to go through, to be very clear, to go through the whole process and admin process to figure things out there. So I think to me, at this day and age, in particular with COVID, work from home, what I really look for is somebody who's really good at communication. Communication, not saying that need to be public speaking kind of communication, but communication in a sense that in the past, I could have just gone to someone's desk and just talked to them just to see how they're doing, right? Or if anything got stuck, I can just walk over. But now that we're working from home, sometimes there's just so many meetings and things that people might not be able to be available there, right? So by being good at communication, by being able to connect with one another, really helps to figure things out, what's needed and what's help they need. To me, that's a really key thing to do. I would say another thing is, because I'm in a customer success division, is the amount of empathy with others. It's so important that, because we're dealing with millions of customers here, is that the people at whatever level having the ability to empathize, to understand what customers are going through, why they're experiencing challenges, or how can we make it as frictionless as possible. And that's also a very, very useful skill sets to have. And I would say
Nice.
thirdly is be able to understand and be able to connect various different digital tools, in a sense that, yes, digital transformation has been tremendous because of COVID, because of the transformation forced to, but then ultimately we're working with humans. We're not working with computers, right? And how can we make the digital tools, digital process, digital e-commerce, make it much more human-like, make it much more easy and approachable, it's actually successful for the customer to finish through what they need to do.
Yeah. So that's great. It's a great point. So I heard communication, empathy, understanding, and connecting using technologies. And that's going to be that I don't think that's going to go away, right? Even with the introduction of the vaccine and people getting into the office, I think there's always going to be that hybrid model that we're going to have. And having those skill sets are going to be incredibly important as we progress into the future. So there is one question I want to ask, and it's, how important is somebody, especially today, given that people are working remote, how important is it for them to be able to understand your company culture? Is that something that you look for in candidates?
I think it's really important to be able to assimilate to someone's company's culture, right? I
Mm-hmm.
do really agree with that. But I also find it incredibly difficult for a candidate to understand someone's culture. Like no amount of interviews could actually give you a sense of what the culture of the company is either, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's a bit of an art and science by asking, you know, coaching like question, but I think sort of powerful question, really try to unlock and see what's the company culture is like. And I guess in this case, some sort of tips would be like is try to ask open-ended question, asking a question with what rather than why, or how, or do you, that kind of questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes really tease it out to understand, try to really unlock certain things that might not appear. Um, I guess interviews or hiring, it's just like a dating game, right? And everybody want to put the best foot forward, but sometimes it's not the most transparent or not the most honest interview either, right? Because everybody trying to be the best self. But by focusing on the nuances, by focusing on the body language, and by asking the what questions, that could give you a bit of a telltale sign of culture.
Excellent. So asking a series of what questions instead of how questions is really going to give the candidate a good idea in terms of what the culture is like. So, but as somebody who's also hiring them, is that something that you're looking for when you're interviewing people?
Yeah, absolutely. In this case, because everything is now done over video, right, rather than face-to-face meet, at least in Canada still, uh, then I would ask similar sort of questions as well. Is more like asking situational questions, asking a little bit more about the personality and what they are like in various different situations, and that could help understanding the cultural pieces of it. And also because it's now much more flat, right? In the past, you can see the whole body, you can see the body movement, the handshake and everything. Now it's just in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So I also would suggest to use a different way, and to try to illustrate that there is humor in the person, right? There is creativity in the person that is beyond just a square on Zoom.
No, it makes sense 100%. And this is, and it's actually one of the things I talk about as well is, when you are on video, don't let it just be your head or your face, get like 2/3 of your body into the frame of the video. So you can be a lot more expressive. Like you said, express your body language and show that creativity, right? Because that's the only thing that's really going to link you, right? And I know earlier when we were talking, I thought the number was 300 candidates per position, but now we're looking at 1,000 people. So, any advantage that you can get to stand out over the 1,000 other people that are potentially interviewing for the same role, you got to do everything that you can within your own power to make sure that you stand out. So great tip, and I think it's incredibly relevant, especially for today. And I don't think people are going to be going into the office anytime soon to do any sort of interviews. I think it's still going to be a lot of it over video. So it's great tips. Is there anything else that you would look
Yeah.
for specifically in a candidate if you were to hire somebody? Just, if there was one thing that's a must for you, what's the one thing that you really look for?
I think another thing that I really look for is ability to connect and break down the silos. In a sense that I'm not asking the candidate to erase, department border and things like that. But
Mhm.
but because it's getting more and more matrix environment in most companies, right? And because we all working from home, and the candidate be able to understand, empathize, but connect and collaborate and influence different departments to get to the common goal. That's a tremendous skill set to have, especially in the digital transformation customer success department.
Okay. No, that's great. And actually, so a couple of words: communication, empathy, understanding, breaking down barriers, and really collaborating, I think is the word that I'm hearing as well with what you're saying, Elliot. You got to be the person
Absolutely.
that collaborates today, right? And if you think that you're going to sit in a corner and do all the work by yourself, I think people are going to struggle with that, right? Even developers who code, they still need to collaborate with other people, in other departments to make sure that they're coding for the right thing, right? And really working on a product that's going to deliver for the organization. So great tips, Elliot. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you want to add to that?
I like to add one tip for in terms of a book.
Mhm.
This book I stumbled upon in a public library. This is a pretty old book, but it's been something that helps me a lot and also my clients a lot in terms of understanding how to talk about themselves. So the book is called Mastering the Job Interview and Winning the Money Game by Kate Windleton, coming from a series called The 5 O'Clock Club. So obviously this book is really old. I think it's like 20, 30 years old. But what's amazing is that is this book make it very easy to understand how to discover and how to do exercise to understand about yourself and
Wow.
about how to package yourself, in particular useful for folks who are moving from one industry to the other, to move from one role to the other, that is typically not as easy as to package it in your resume.
Yeah. Okay, great. So what I will do, Elliot, I'll make sure I put a link out to that book in the show notes so people can find it. And actually, that's one I've never heard of. So definitely one I'm going to pick up and look at because it sounds very interesting. So it's Kate Windleton, right? I think that's the name that you mentioned.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I'll
yeah.
take a look. So as we get to the end of our podcast, Elliot, I know, you've given us a slew of information in terms of, what you did, in terms of your journey and how you prepared. You gave us some tips on what you look for as a director who hires people for his team, empathy, communication, understanding, connecting, and collaborating. So great tips in terms of, just helping the audience member understand what it is they need to do to succeed. If people wanted to get a hold of you and connect with you somehow, how would they do that?
Yeah, they could connect me on LinkedIn. The easiest way to get to my LinkedIn profile is actually going to my website, which is Elliot ELLIOTNG.com. That would go directly to my LinkedIn profile. And for those who want to learn a bit more about my coaching style, you can also go to my coaching website. In this case, is mthcoach.com.
Okay. I'll make sure I include that in the show notes as well. So if people are listening and they want to just, take a look into your profile and learn more about your coaching and what you do there, I think that would be great. I'll make sure I include the links in there. So Elliot, thank you again for your time today, for spending this time with us and sharing your knowledge and your expertise and just your experience around what it takes to succeed in the job search process, and also to let us know what it is people need to do to be successful in their own job search. So thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, John. Really pleasure talking to all of you.
And that is it for this episode of the Canadian Job Search Podcast. Wishing you all a great one. Talk to you all soon. Take care.